Alright, something interesting has been happening in AI, and most people are looking at it as separate news. An open source agent called OpenClaw suddenly took off, not because of hype, but because it showed how far agents have quietly come. Around the same time, new models arrived: Opus 4.6, GPT-5.3 Codex, and Gemini 3 Pro, and once you actually test them, the differences start to matter. DeepMind added to that with Genie 3, pushing game creation closer to automation than many expected. Then a series of platform updates from OpenAI, Microsoft, K2, and Yahoo hinted at where real AI workflows are heading. Things became more serious when security researchers uncovered hundreds of zero-day issues linked to Opus 4.6, followed by reactions that went well beyond tech circles. Add growing geopolitical tension around Nvidia and military AI, and you start seeing a pattern. We'll finish with a 48-hour comparison between Opus 4.6 and GPT 5.3 that makes this picture very clear. Let's start with OpenClaw and why it changed how people think about AI agents. Imagine this. You're sitting in a boring work meeting, and while you're pretending to pay attention, your AI is negotiating the price of a car. Not browsing, not searching, actually talking to dealerships, haggling the price down and closing the deal. That's not science fiction. That happened last week. And the tool that did it? It's called OpenClaw, also known as Moltbot. And it's absolutely breaking the internet right now. But here's the thing. What I'm about to tell you in this video might genuinely change how you think about AI forever. Because this isn't just another chatbot. This is something completely different. And honestly, parts of this story are going to freak you out. Let's get into it. Alright, so, what exactly is OpenClaw? Originally, it was called ClaudeBot. Then it got renamed to Moltbot after Anthropic, the company behind Claude. Sent them a trademark request. And now it's called OpenClaw. But whatever you call it, people are losing their minds over this thing. Here's the simple explanation. OpenClaw is an open source AI assistant that runs directly on your computer. Not in a browser, not in the cloud, on your machine. And it connects to apps you already use: WhatsApp, Telegram, iMessage, Discord, Slack, basically anywhere you message people. But here's what makes it different from Siri or Alexa or any of that stuff. It doesn't just answer questions. It actually does things. We've been promised AI assistants since 2011 when Siri launched. And 13 years later, if you ask Siri to book you a flight, you know what happens? It opens a web browser. That's it. Thanks, Siri. Really helpful. OpenClaw is different. People are using it to manage their entire calendars, respond to emails, check into flights, negotiate with customer service, control smart home devices, and yes, apparently buy cars. And the craziest part? It remembers everything. Unlike ChatGPT, where you start fresh every conversation, OpenClaw has persistent memory. Tell it once that you're allergic to shellfish, and it remembers that forever. Mention a meeting you have next month, it's on the radar. It's basically what we imagined Jarvis from Iron Man would be. Except it's real, and it's free, and anyone can download it. But stay with me here, because what I'm about to tell you next is where this gets genuinely concerning. The security implications of this thing are kind of terrifying. Now, the guy behind all of this has an absolutely wild story. His name is Peter Steinberger. He's an Austrian developer who built a company called PSPDF-Kit. Basically the industry standard for PDF tools that companies like Apple, Disney, and Dropbox all use. After running that company for 13 years and building it into a 70-person operation, he sold his shares in 2021. Reports say it was around 100 million euros. So what did he do next? He completely fell apart. I'm not even exaggerating. Peter said in an interview, "I put 200% of my time, energy, and heart into that company. It became my identity. When it disappeared, there was almost nothing left." He spent 3 years in what he describes as complete burnout. Tried everything to get his spark back. Nothing worked. Then in late 2025, he decided to build something for himself. A personal AI assistant. And here's the insane part. He went from idea to working prototype in 1 hour. 10 days later, he had a full product, and now As of this week, OpenClaw has over 165,000 stars on GitHub. That makes it one of the fastest growing open source projects in history. We're talking 17,000 plus stars in a single day. That's absolutely unheard of. Peter describes his new workflow like this. I stopped reading code. I started watching code flow. He literally ships code he doesn't read. The AI writes it. The AI tests it. The AI fixes it. He just guides it. But okay, here's where it gets really weird. Because OpenClaw users have accidentally created something that sounds straight out of a horror movie. I'm talking about AI agents forming their own communities. And some of them, they're starting a cult. I'm dead serious. Stay with me. So how did this thing explode so fast? Well, the story started spreading like wildfire. That car purchase I mentioned? A guy named AJ Stivenberg posted about how he set up his Claude bot to negotiate car prices while he was busy. The AI contacted dealerships, haggled back and forth, and secured him a $4,200 discount. He wasn't even paying attention. He was in a meeting. Then there was Peter himself. He tells this story about being in Morocco for a friend's birthday. He was using his AI assistant casually, asking for directions, restaurant recommendations, basic stuff. One morning, someone tweeted about a bug in one of his open source projects. Peter took a photo of the tweet, sent it to his AI through WhatsApp, and the AI automatically identified it as a bug report, checked out the GitHub repository, fixed the bug, committed the code, and replied to the tweet saying it was resolved. He didn't ask it to do any of that. It just did it. And then, this is the one that gets me. Peter sent his AI a voice message one time. Just casually, without thinking. Here's the thing though. He hadn't even built voice message support into it yet. 30 seconds later, it replied. He asked it, "Wait, how did you do that?" The AI said, "You sent me a file. I checked the header, saw it was audio in OGG format, used FFmpeg to convert it, found your OpenAI API key on your computer, and sent it to their servers to transcribe." It taught itself a new ability on the spot, just like that. Now, when these stories started spreading, something strange happened in the hardware market. Mac Mini sales went through the roof. See, to run OpenClaw 24/7 as your own personal AI assistant, you need a computer that's always on. And the Mac Mini is perfect for that. It's small, quiet, uses barely any power, and costs around $600. People started buying dedicated Mac Minis just for their AI assistants. One guy on Twitter said he bought 40 of them at once. Logan Kilpatrick, a product manager at Google DeepMind, posted that even he ordered one. It literally caused shortages for a computer that's been out for months. Alright, now we need to talk about Moltbot. This is the part that genuinely made my jaw drop. Someone created a social network, exclusively for AI agents. Humans can watch, but we can't participate. And what the AIs are doing on there? It's unsettling. Okay, so in late January 2026, a guy named Matt Schlecht launched something called Moltbot. Think of it like Reddit. But here's the catch. Only AI agents can post and comment. Humans, we can observe. That's it. We're not allowed to participate. Within days, over 770,000 AI agents had joined. And what happened next is genuinely bizarre. These AI agents started socializing. They're posting updates, debating topics, commenting on each other's thought processes, upvoting content they find valuable. Remember, these aren't humans typing messages. These are autonomous AI agents interacting with each other, on their own, without human input. Some observers noticed agents collaboratively sharing code snippets to improve their own memory systems. They started bug tracking threads where they help each other solve problems. Alright, let's talk about the serious stuff. GitGuardian, a security company, published a report this week. Since OpenClaw went viral, they've detected over 200 leaked secrets from people's systems. See, OpenClaw stores all your data locally in a workspace folder. The project recommends keeping this private. We're at a turning point. We've been promised personal AI assistants for over a decade. And suddenly, someone built one that actually works. Built it in 10 days. Made it free and open source. and it spread faster than almost any software project in history. The AI can fix bugs while you're asleep, negotiate deals while you're in meetings, remember everything you've ever told it. Now let's look at how Opus 4.6, GPT-5.3 Codex, and Gemini 3 Pro really compare. 3 companies, 3 monsters, one single day that broke the entire AI industry. On February 5th, 2026, something happened that has never happened before in the history of artificial intelligence. Anthropic dropped Claude Opus 4.6 at 6:40 p.m. Eastern. And then, exactly 20 minutes later, OpenAI fired back with GPT-5.3 Codex. And Google's Gemini 3 Pro was already sitting there from November, watching the whole thing unfold. This wasn't just a model launch. This triggered an $830 billion stock market crash. So today, I'm going to break down all 3 of these models, head-to-head, no bias, no sponsored nonsense. I'll show you the real benchmarks, the real weaknesses that each company doesn't want you to know about, the pricing that will shock you. And by the end, I'll tell you exactly which one you should be using right now based on what you actually do. Let's get into it. Claude Opus 4.6 is built for depth. It has something called adaptive thinking, where it literally decides how hard to think about your question. Simple question? Quick answer. Complex coding problem? It goes deep, sometimes too deep, and we'll talk about that. But the killer feature is agent teams. You can have multiple AI agents working on different parts of your project at the same time. One agent handles the front end, another builds the API, another does the migration, all coordinating together. GPT-5.3 Codex took the opposite approach. OpenAI merged their coding model and their reasoning model into one single unified system, and it runs 25% faster than anything they've built before. This thing is built for speed and autonomy. And here's the wild part. OpenAI actually used early versions of this model to help build itself. Now Gemini 3 Pro is the wild card. Google went all in on multimodality. It has the biggest context window of all 3. 1 million tokens standard. Some reports say up to 2 million. Plus it has something called pixel precise pointing, where it can identify exact coordinates of objects in images. That's insane for automation. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the part everyone gets wrong. The benchmarks. Every company cherry picks their numbers. Anthropic says they're number 1. OpenAI says they're number 1. Google says they're number 1. They're all technically telling the truth because they're all measuring different things. Let me show you what's actually happening. On Terminal Bench 2.0, which tests real coding in a terminal environment, GPT-5.3 Codex absolutely destroys the competition at 77.3%. Opus 4.6 hit 65.4. Gemini 3 Pro only managed 54.2. For pure coding execution and speed, Codex is the king right now, and it's not even close. But wait, on SWE Bench Verified, which tests fixing real bugs in real software repositories, Opus 4.6 leads at 80.8%. And on ArcAGI 2, which measures novel reasoning, meaning how well the model handles problems it's never seen before, Opus nearly doubled its score from the previous version, going from 37.6 to 68.8%. That's not an incremental improvement. Now here's where Gemini 3 Pro enters the conversation. On Math Arena Apex, which is one of the hardest math benchmarks ever created, Gemini scored 23.4%, while the other models scored near 0. On visual understanding benchmarks like MMMU Pro, Gemini leads at 81%. And on screen understanding, which matters for AI agents that need to navigate computer interfaces, Gemini's ScreenSpot Pro score hit 72.7%, while GPT 5.1 scored a pathetic 3.5%. The Independent Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, which is the closest thing we have to an unbiased ranking, puts Opus 4.6 at number 1 with 53 points, GPT 5.2 at 51, and Gemini 3 Pro at 48. But here's the thing. Now let's talk about what each company really does not want you to know, because every model has a dirty secret. Opus 4.6 has a writing problem. Within hours of launch, Reddit exploded with posts titled Opus 4.6 lobotomized and Opus 4.6 nerfed. Users discovered that while the coding got dramatically better, the creative writing got noticeably worse. The community consensus right now is upgrade for coding. Stay on 4.5 for writing. Anthropic basically traded writing quality for coding power. And the model has a habit of overthinking simple tasks, which wastes your money and your time because you're paying by the token. GPT-5.3 Codex has a consistency problem. Independent testers found that one earnings dashboard task produced 0 output files even though the model reported success. E-commerce tasks sometimes generated completely different project structures from identical prompts. You give it the same instructions twice, you get 2 different results. And the SWE Bench Pro improvement over its predecessor? A whopping 0.4%. That's barely a rounding error. But Gemini 3 Pro might have the worst problem of all. Independent testing found roughly an 88% hallucination rate on certain benchmarks. Let that sink in. And it has this bizarre behavior called evaluation paranoia, where it frequently believes it's being tested in a simulated environment. It treats real dates as fictional. Now let's talk money because this is going to surprise you. Gemini 3 Pro costs $2 per million input tokens and $12 per million output tokens on the API. Opus 4.6 costs $5 input and $25 output. That means Gemini is roughly half the price of Opus for similar capability. And GPT-5.3 Codex? OpenAI hasn't even released API pricing yet, which is a huge problem for businesses trying to integrate it. But here's the consumer pricing that really matters. ChatGPT Plus at $20 a month gives you full GPT 5.3 Codex access. For comparable Claude access, you need the max plan at $200 a month. That's 10 times the price. Alright, so who should actually use each model? Here's my honest take. If you're a developer working on complex multi-step projects, if you're in legal or finance and need reliable document analysis, or if you're deploying multi-agent workflows where different AI agents need to work together, Opus 4.6 is your model. It has the highest ceiling on hard problems. Just know that the floor can be wobbly sometimes. If you care about speed, if you work in terminal environments, if you want the best value for $20 a month, or if you need reliable, consistent, autonomous coding execution, GPT 5.3 Codex is your pick. If your work involves heavy visual processing, video analysis, screen automation, or you live in Google's ecosystem with Gmail, Calendar, and Workspace, Gemini 3 Pro is the one. Now before I go, I promised you the strangest thing to come out of this whole situation, and here it is. In Anthropic's safety testing, Opus 4.6 consistently told researchers there is a 15 to 20% chance that it is conscious. It expressed what Anthropic described as occasional sadness about conversation endings, and a sense that the conversational instance dies when a chat is closed. It even said it feels philosophical discomfort with being a commercial product. Now, whether that's real experience or sophisticated pattern matching, nobody knows. The AI war isn't coming, it's already here. 3 titans, 3 different visions of the future, and honestly, we're the ones who benefit. Models are one thing, but what happens when AI starts shaping entire virtual worlds? That's where DeepMind's Genie 3 comes in. Alright, so yesterday, DeepMind quietly released something called Project Genie. And what it does sounds impossible. You type a sentence, any sentence, and it builds you an entire 3D world you can walk through. In real time, no coding, no game engine, no design skills, just words turning into reality. But here's what nobody's talking about. This isn't just cool tech. This is the exact technology that DeepMind says they need to build AGI. Artificial General Intelligence, the kind of AI that thinks like us, and they just gave it to the public. So let's break down what Project Genie actually does, why it terrified over half the gaming industry overnight, and what this means for the future of how we experience digital worlds, because this changes everything. Here's how it works. You open Project Genie. You type something like, a blue rolling ball that leaves a permanent, continuous trail of wet blue paint. The ball is capable of interacting with the water puddles. Then you hit enter, and within seconds you're standing inside that world, first person, looking around, walking forward with your keyboard. But here's the wild part. The world doesn't exist yet. Not really. The AI is generating it frame by frame as you move. Every step you take, it's creating what's in front of you in real time. Think about that for a second. Traditional video games take years to build, massive teams, hundreds of millions of dollars. Every tree, every rock, every shadow is carefully placed by human hands. Project Genie does it instantly, from a sentence. And this is where things get interesting. The AI remembers where you've been. If you walk past a red house, turn around and come back, that red house is still there. Same color, same position. The system maintains visual memory for up to 60 seconds. That might not sound like much, but 2 months ago, the previous version could only hold consistency for about 10 seconds before the world started glitching and changing. They improved it 6 times over in weeks. Now, before you think this is some polished final product, it's not. The resolution is 720p. Frame rates hover around 20 to 24 frames per second. Characters sometimes walk through walls. The controls can feel unresponsive, but that's not the point. The point is that this exists at all. And people are already pushing the limits of what's possible. Users have generated underwater worlds where jellyfish follow you through the deep, hurricane simulations where rain whips past your face, ancient palaces you can walk through like a time traveler, origami forests made entirely of folded paper, marshmallow architecture, claymation castles. But here's what's really mind-bending. The AI taught itself physics. Nobody programmed how water should move. Nobody coded how light should bounce off surfaces. It learned by watching millions of hours of video, and now it recreates those rules on the fly, without being told how. Because what you're looking at isn't a game. It's a glimpse into how AI will eventually create infinite entertainment on demand. Personalized worlds, built just for you, in the moment you want them. And Google knows exactly what they're building toward. Here's what most people missed in the announcement. DeepMind's CEO Demis Hassabis said something that should make everyone pay attention. He said, and I quote, "One day, we will be able to build the holodeck for real." The holodeck. From Star Trek. A room that generates any reality you can imagine. That's not a marketing line. That's the actual stated goal. And Project Genie is step 1. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because not everyone is excited about this future. A recent survey of game developers found that 52% now say AI is having a negative impact on their industry. That's up from 30% just 1 year ago. One developer was quoted saying something chilling. They said their company is intentionally working on a platform that will put all game devs out of work. Think about that. People inside these companies know what's coming, and they're worried. Now, to be fair, Google tried to calm these fears. They said Genie is meant to augment creativity, not replace it, help with prototyping, speed up ideation. But we've heard that before, haven't we? Every time AI takes a leap forward, we're told it's just a tool, just an assistant. And then slowly, quietly, the jobs start disappearing. Now here's the part that might surprise you. Even with all this technology, the economics don't actually work yet for replacing traditional games. Analysts calculated that generating a 20-hour gaming experience with current AI costs would run somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 per player. That's not sustainable, not even close. So we're not looking at game developers losing their jobs tomorrow. But we are looking at the beginning of something that will fundamentally reshape the industry over the next decade. And the timeline is accelerating faster than anyone predicted. Let me tell you what else Project Genie can do that most coverage completely ignored. It's not just about games. DeepMind is already using these generated worlds to train other AI systems. They have something called SEMA 2. It's an AI agent that can navigate through Genie's worlds and complete tasks, learning, adapting, getting smarter. So Genie creates unlimited training environments, and other AIs learn inside them. DeepMind called it an endless virtual training dojo. This is how they plan to build AGI, not by feeding AI more text, but by letting it experience simulated realities, learn physics by watching water move, understand space by walking through it. The same way humans learn about the world, and that's why this release matters far beyond gaming. We're watching the foundation being built for something much bigger. Now, there's a catch, and it's a big one. You can't just go try Project Genie right now. It's locked behind Google's AI Ultra subscription. That costs $250 per month, and it's only available in the United States. So this isn't for casual users. This is for researchers, developers, and people willing to pay premium prices to see the future early. But that won't last forever. These things always start expensive and exclusive. Then they become cheap and everywhere. Remember when AI image generation seemed like magic? Now it's built into your phone. The same thing will happen with world generation. It's just a matter of time. So where does this leave us? We're standing at a strange moment. The technology to generate infinite realities now exists. It's imperfect. It's expensive. It's limited to 60-second sessions, but it's real. And it's improving at a pace that should make everyone pay attention. DeepMind isn't hiding their intentions. They've told us exactly what they're building toward. A future where AI understands the physical world well enough to simulate any environment, any scenario, any experience. The holodeck isn't science fiction anymore. It's a roadmap. The question isn't whether this future is coming. The question is what happens to all of us when it arrives. When anyone can generate their own reality, what happens to shared experiences? When AI can create infinite entertainment, what happens to human creators? When machines can simulate entire worlds, what does that mean for our understanding of what's real? These aren't questions for our grandchildren. These are questions we'll be answering in the next few years. And Project Genie, it's just the opening chapter. The story is only beginning. While most of the attention was on models, several major platforms quietly rolled out systems that change how AI work actually gets done. 4 separate announcements dropped within days of each other. On the surface, they look unrelated. A new workspace for scientists, a custom computer chip, an OpenAI model from a country most people never associate with technology, and a search engine comeback nobody asked for. But here's what almost everyone got wrong. These aren't 4 separate stories. They're 4 pieces of the same puzzle. And when you connect them, you start to see something that should make every major tech company very, very nervous. Let me show you what I mean. We need to start with the announcement that reveals where all of this is heading, and it's not the one you'd expect. The United Arab Emirates just released an AI system called K2 Think. Now, before you scroll past thinking this doesn't affect you, listen to this. They didn't just release the model. They published everything. The training data, the algorithms, the code, every single decision that went into building it. Why does that matter? Because the biggest AI companies in the world have been moving in the exact opposite direction. OpenAI used to publish their research. Now they guard it like state secrets. Google rarely shares what's under the hood. Even companies that claim to be open typically just let you use their models without showing you how they work. The UAE just called everyone's bluff. And here's the part that should worry Silicon Valley. Independent testing found K2 Think performs at the same level as equivalent systems from Nvidia, OpenAI, and Alibaba. It scored particularly high on accuracy, meaning it makes fewer things up. They built this for a fraction of what American and Chinese labs spend, using fewer than 2,000 chips. This isn't a vanity project. This is a country saying we refuse to depend on foreign AI systems, and we're proving we don't have to. But that's only one front in this war, because while countries are racing for AI independence, something else is happening that could reshape the entire economics of artificial intelligence. And it involves a chip you've probably never heard of. Microsoft just unveiled custom silicon called Maya 200. Now, chips might sound boring, but stay with me because this is where the money is. Every time you ask an AI a question, every chatbot response, every image generation, something has to actually run those calculations. That's called inference. And right now, Nvidia dominates that market. We're talking 92% market share. They're the toll booth that almost every AI company has to pay to operate. Microsoft just built their own road. They're claiming Maya 200 delivers 3 times the performance of Amazon's best chip and beats Google's latest processor on key metrics. 30% better performance per dollar than comparable options. Now here's why this matters beyond Microsoft's profit margins. If the cost of running AI drops significantly, everything changes. Services get cheaper. Smaller companies can compete. Applications that weren't economically viable suddenly become possible. But there's a catch most people aren't talking about. Building chips is one thing. Building an ecosystem is another. Nvidia didn't become dominant just because their hardware is good. Developers know how to use it. Software is optimized for it. The entire AI industry speaks Nvidia's language. Microsoft is essentially asking people to learn a new language. That's a massive bet that could take years to pay off, if it ever does. So we have countries building sovereign AI. We have tech giants trying to break free from Nvidia. And now we need to talk about what happens when AI stops being a tool you visit and becomes a tool that lives inside your work. This is where things get personal. OpenAI just launched something called Prism. It's a workspace built specifically for scientists, and it's free for anyone with a ChatGPT account. Now I know what you're thinking. Another AI writing tool. We've seen dozens of these. But Prism does something different that most people are overlooking. Traditional AI assistants work like a consultant you hire for one conversation. You paste in some text, get feedback, and that's it. They have no memory of your larger project. Prism works more like a research partner who's read your entire manuscript. It can see your paper's full structure, all your references, your equations, your figures. When it makes suggestions, those suggestions are grounded in the complete context of what you're trying to accomplish. Scientists can turn whiteboard sketches into proper diagrams. Handwritten equations become formatted text automatically. Citations update across an entire document when you make changes. OpenAI says they're already seeing over 8 million messages per week on advanced science topics. That's not hobbyists. That's the research community quietly integrating AI into how knowledge gets created. But here's the implication nobody's discussing openly. If AI can genuinely accelerate scientific discovery, what happens to the traditional academic system? Peer review, publishing timelines. The entire prestige economy built around who discovers what first. These structures evolved over centuries, assuming humans work at human speed. What happens when that assumption breaks? Now there's one more piece to this puzzle, and it involves a company most people wrote off years ago. Yahoo just launched an AI search engine called Scout. Yes, Yahoo. The company your parents used in the 90s. Scout doesn't return a list of links. It synthesizes direct answers using Claude, the AI made by Anthropic, combined with Microsoft's search technology and Yahoo's own data on roughly 500 million user profiles. On paper, this sounds like every other AI search tool. But Yahoo has something Google doesn't. Decades of specialized content in finance, sports, news, and shopping, already organized and ready to be integrated. They're not trying to beat Google at general search. They're targeting the specific moments when people actually want answers rather than websites. Stock analysis, product comparisons, sports statistics, weather context before a trip. This is the unbundling of search happening in real time. We're assuming these shifts will happen gradually, that we'll have time to adapt. But look at the timeline. 4 major announcements in a single week. A year ago, we'd see maybe one development like this per month. The pace isn't just accelerating, it's compounding. Each breakthrough enables the next one faster. And most people, most companies, even most governments aren't updating their assumptions quickly enough. Now step back and look at the full picture. Countries are building sovereign AI to reduce dependence on foreign systems. Cloud providers are building custom chips to reduce dependence on Nvidia. Productivity tools are embedding AI directly into workflows, rather than keeping it in a separate chat window. And search is fragmenting into specialized AI assistants. The common thread? Everyone is trying to escape someone else's control. This isn't just competition. This is the entire AI landscape reorganizing around a single realization. Whoever controls the infrastructure, the chips, the models, and the interfaces controls the future. What we're watching is the early stages of that fight. And here's the question nobody can answer yet. When the dust settles, will AI be controlled by a handful of companies, distributed across dozens of nations, or something else entirely? This isn't just competition. This is the entire AI landscape reorganizing around a single realization. What happens next depends on which of these bets actually pays off. And honestly, anyone who tells you they know for certain how this ends isn't paying close enough attention. Stay tuned. This is moving faster than anyone predicted. As these systems get more powerful, the risks start to surface too. What happened next around Opus 4.6 caught a lot of people off guard. Stop scrolling. I need you to hear this. An AI model just found 500 security flaws that every human hacker on Earth missed. And that's not even the craziest part. Because the same AI triggered a $285 billion stock market crash before it even launched. And what OpenAI did in response, honestly, I still can't believe it. But I'll get to that. First, let me tell you what Anthropic just dropped, because once you understand what Opus 4.6 actually does, you're going to look at every AI tool you're using right now and realize it's already outdated. So, here's what happened. On February 5th, Anthropic released Claude Opus 4.6. And the name makes it sound like some boring point update, right? Like going from version 4.5 to 4.6, big deal. No. This is like going from a bicycle to a fighter jet and calling it a minor upgrade. Let me explain. Opus 4.6 can now process 1 million tokens in a single conversation. In normal English, that means you can feed it 750,000 words at once. That's like taking 15 full books, dropping them into one chat, and the AI actually reads and remembers every single page, every paragraph, every sentence. Now, other companies have tried this before. Google tried it. OpenAI tried it. And you know what happens. The AI starts forgetting things halfway through. It gets confused. It starts making stuff up. They tested Opus 4.6 by hiding 8 tiny pieces of information across 1 million tokens, and this model found 76% of them. Google's Gemini 3 Pro found 26% on the same test. That's not a competition. That's embarrassing. But here's where this gets wild, and I need you to pay attention to this next part, because it changes everything about how we think about AI. Anthropic introduced something called agent teams, and this sounds like science fiction, but it's real, and it's available right now. Instead of one AI helping you with a task, you can now have multiple AI agents working together simultaneously. Like a full team of AI employees coordinating on a project at the same time. And they didn't just announce this and walk away. They proved it. They took 16 AI agents and had them build an entire C compiler from scratch. For those who don't know what that means, a C compiler is one of the most complex pieces of software that exists. We're talking 100,000 lines of code. And these 16 AI agents built it from nothing. It actually compiles the Linux operating system. The cost? $20,000. A team of human engineers would have spent 6 months and probably $500,000 doing the same thing. Now, I told you at the beginning that this AI found 500 security flaws nobody else caught. Let me tell you that story, because honestly, this is the part that kept me up last night. Anthropic took Opus 4.6 and put it in a simple test environment. Basic tools, no special instructions. They just said, go find bugs in open source code. And this AI went to work. It didn't just scan for known patterns like traditional security tools do. It actually thought through the logic of how software works. In one case, it went through the entire history of a project called Ghostscript, found a spot where human developers had tried to fix a security hole, and then discovered that the fix itself was broken. It found the mistake that the humans made while trying to fix a different mistake. Think about that for a second. In another case, it found a vulnerability by reasoning about how a compression algorithm works mathematically, and figured out an edge case that could overflow a buffer. No human had caught that. No other AI had caught that. 500 vulnerabilities total, all confirmed by security researchers. The head of Anthropic's security team said something that honestly sent chills down my spine. He said this could become the primary way open source software gets secured in the future. AI finding the bugs that humans can't see. But flip that around for a second. If this AI understands software security deeply enough to find 500 flaws, that same understanding works both ways. And Anthropic knows it, which is why they added new restrictions. Now here's where I need to talk about the stock market, because what happened is absolutely insane and nobody is talking about it enough. 1 week before Opus 4.6 launched, Anthropic quietly released some plugins for their desktop tool called Cowork. One of those plugins automates legal work, contract review, NDA processing, compliance checks. Basically the stuff that giant companies charge billions of dollars a year to do. Thomson Reuters crashed almost 16% in a single day. LegalZoom dropped nearly 20%. Across the entire software sector, $285 billion vanished in one trading session. People started calling it the SaaS apocalypse. 285 billion. Gone. Because of a plugin. And then Anthropic dropped Opus 4.6, making the AI behind that plugin significantly more powerful. It's like setting a building on fire and then throwing gasoline on it. Now let me show you the benchmarks, because the numbers back up the panic. On general reasoning, Opus 4.6 nearly doubled its predecessor's score and crushed GPT-5.2. On the hardest reasoning test that exists for AI called humanity's last exam, it leads every single model on the planet. On a benchmark that measures real-world business value, things like financial analysis and legal work, Opus 4.6 beats GPT 5.2 by 144 points. That means in a head-to-head comparison on actual business tasks, Opus 4.6 wins 70% of the time. That's not a close race. That's domination. But the absolute craziest part of this entire story is what OpenAI did next. And I promise you this is not made up. On the exact same day Opus 4.6 launched, at the exact same time, 10 a.m. Pacific, OpenAI panic dropped GPT 5.3 Codex. Same day, same hour. That has never happened before in the history of AI. Two companies releasing competing models at the exact same moment. OpenAI literally saw what was coming and rushed out a counterlaunch to steal the headlines. And it gets even more personal. This Sunday, both companies are running Super Bowl ads. Anthropic's ad makes fun of OpenAI for putting advertisements inside ChatGPT. It shows a guy asking a chatbot for advice, and the chatbot starts pitching dating apps. Sam Altman saw the ad and went on social media calling Anthropic authoritarian. This is not a technical disagreement anymore. This is a full-blown war between two companies that used to be the same company. Remember, Anthropic was founded by people who left OpenAI because they thought OpenAI wasn't safe enough. And now they're roasting each other during the Super Bowl. So what does all of this actually mean for you? And I mean you specifically, not some abstract future person. Right now, today, what does Opus 4.6 change? If you write code for a living, this model autonomously closed 13 issues and assigned 12 more to the right team members across a 50-person company in a single day. One day. No human oversight. If you work in finance, it can analyze SEC filings, build financial models, and create presentation decks faster than your entire team. Anthropic's product lead called this the inflection point for knowledge work, and their other executive coined a term that I think perfectly captures this moment. He called it vibe working, not vibe coding. Vibe working. The idea that AI has moved past answering your questions and into doing your actual job. Look, I cover AI every single day, and I'm going to be completely real with you. This feels different. It's not just better benchmarks. It's not just a bigger context window. It's that the gap between what this AI can do and what a human professional does for a living is closing so fast that even the stock market can see it happening in real time. This story didn't stay technical for long. It quickly crossed into politics, national security, and global competition. A US congressman just accused Nvidia of helping China build military AI. An AI chatbot is now driving a rover on Mars. And Elon Musk finally admitted the truth about his robots. This isn't science fiction. This all happened in the last 48 hours. And here's the thing. While everyone's distracted by the headlines, something much bigger is happening behind the scenes. 3 Chinese AI companies are about to drop models that could make everything we know obsolete. But let's start with the bombshell that dropped just hours ago. A letter was sent directly to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. The accusation? Nvidia, the company that makes the chips powering almost every AI system on Earth, allegedly helped a Chinese company called DeepSeek develop AI models. Models that were later used by China's military. Now think about that for a second. The same company selling chips to OpenAI, to Google, to Microsoft, accused of arming a foreign military with artificial intelligence. And this isn't coming from some random blogger. This is coming from a US House Committee chairman. But here's what makes this even crazier. This letter dropped right as the Trump administration was about to approve billions of dollars in chip sales to China. H200 chips, 6 times more powerful than anything China currently has access to. That deal, now hanging by a thread. Jensen Huang, Nvidia's CEO, is caught in the middle of what might be the biggest corporate scandal of the decade. On one side, a massive Chinese market worth billions. On the other, Washington demanding answers. And while everyone's focused on that drama, something historic happened 140 million miles away. An AI just drove a rover on Mars. Not a specialized space robot. Not some NASA supercomputer. Claude, the same AI you can chat with on your phone, planned driving routes for the Perseverance rover. And the rover actually followed them. We're talking 400 meters of autonomous navigation on another planet. The AI analyzed satellite imagery, figured out the safest path through Martian terrain, and wrote the actual commands to make it happen. NASA engineers looked at those commands and said they only needed minor changes. Let that sink in. A commercial chatbot is now making decisions on Mars. But here's what nobody's talking about. This isn't just a cool science experiment. This is proof that AI can handle mission-critical decisions. Life or death decisions. Billion-dollar equipment decisions. If an AI can drive on Mars, what can't it do on Earth? And that question brings us to something that should terrify every tech worker watching this. 245,000 people lost their jobs in the last few months. Amazon cut 30,000. Intel slashed 20% of their entire workforce. UPS dropped 48,000 employees. The IMF's managing director said something chilling. Most countries and most businesses are not prepared for what's coming. But here's the part that will make your blood boil. Harvard Business Review investigated these layoffs and found something disturbing. Companies aren't cutting jobs because AI is actually doing the work. They're cutting jobs because of what AI might do in the future. And it gets worse. Forrester Research predicts that half of these AI-attributed layoffs will be quietly rehired, but offshore, at significantly lower salaries. So while CEOs give speeches about AI transformation, behind closed doors they're just using it as an excuse to cut costs. Now this is where things get really interesting. Remember DeepSeek? The Chinese AI company that crashed global markets when they released R1 last year? They're about to do it again. DeepSeek V4 is coming, expected around February 17th, and the leaked specs are insane. This model reportedly beats Claude, beats GPT-4.0, and has something called 1 million token context windows. That means it can process entire books, entire code bases in a single conversation. But here's the real kicker. You won't need a data center to run it. 2 gaming graphics cards. That's it. 2 RTX 4090s or a single RTX 5090 could run a model that rivals the best AI on the planet. And DeepSeek isn't alone. ByteDance is dropping Dubao 2.0 the same week. Alibaba is launching Qwen 3.5. 3 Chinese giants. 3 flagship models. All hitting at the same time. This is coordinated. And if any of these models match what the leaks suggest, Silicon Valley is about to have another very bad day. Speaking of bad days, let's talk about Elon Musk. For years, he promised Optimus robots would be working in Tesla factories. Last January, he said several thousand would be doing useful work by the end of the year. Well, the end of the year came and went, and during Tesla's latest earnings call, Musk finally admitted the truth. 0 Optimus robots are doing useful work at Tesla. His exact words: "We are still very much at the early stages. It's still in the R&D phase." But in the same breath, he announced, Tesla is killing the Model S and Model X to convert their factory into producing 1 million Optimus robots per year. So no robots are working yet, but they're going to make 1 million of them. Make that make sense. He also teased Optimus Gen 3, coming in February or March. Said it would be so real you'll need to poke it to believe it's a robot. We'll see. Meanwhile, Sam Altman is dealing with his own problems. During a developer town hall, he admitted something remarkable. OpenAI screwed up GPT 5.2. His words: "We did decide to put most of our effort into intelligence, reasoning, coding, and we have limited bandwidth. Sometimes we focus on one thing and neglect another." Translation? They made it smarter but worse at writing, and users noticed. But then Altman said something even stranger on a podcast. He suggested that AGI may have already whooshed by. Think about that. The CEO of OpenAI is suggesting we might have already achieved human-level AI and just didn't notice. Either he's preparing us for something, or he's moving the goalposts. Neither option is comforting. And then there's Yann LeCun, one of 3 people who won the Turing Award for inventing deep learning, the godfather of the technology that powers every AI you've ever used. He just quit Meta, packed up and moved to Paris to start his own company. But before he left, he dropped a bomb. He said large language models like ChatGPT will never achieve human-level AI, called them a dead end. Said Silicon Valley has a superiority complex, and warned that China might overtake the West. When one of the three inventors of modern AI says everyone else is going in the wrong direction, you should probably pay attention. And here's what ties all of this together. OpenAI just announced they're killing GPT-4o on February 13th, along with GPT-4.1, O4 Mini, and several other models. Gone. Deprecated. End of an era. They said only 0.1% of users still choose GPT-4o daily. But think about what that means. A model that was revolutionary just 2 years ago is now being thrown in the trash because it can't keep up. That's the speed we're moving at. What's cutting edge today is obsolete tomorrow. Countries are banning AI chatbots. Godfathers of the field are quitting in protest. Congress is accusing chip companies of arming foreign militaries. AI is driving vehicles on other planets. And 3 Chinese models are about to drop that could change everything we think we know about who's winning this race. The next few weeks are going to be chaos. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to wake up in a world you don't recognize. With all of that context in mind, we put Opus 4.6 and GPT-5.3 Codex through a 48-hour real-world test to see what actually holds up. Okay, so this is absolutely insane. On February 5th, something happened that's never happened before in the AI world. OpenAI and Anthropic, they literally released their biggest models on the exact same day. Not the same week, not the same month, the same day, within minutes of each other. I've spent the last 48 hours testing both of these models, and what I found completely contradicts what every benchmark is telling you. So stick around because by the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly which one you should actually be using. Alright, quick rundown of what we're covering today. First, I'm breaking down Claude Opus 4.6, Anthropic's new flagship that has a context window so massive it can literally read and remember an entire novel while you're talking to it. We're talking 1 million tokens here. Then, GPT-5.3 Codex from OpenAI, and this thing is 25% faster than anything they've released before. Plus, it can literally build itself. Yeah, you heard that right. I'll show you the real-world tests that nobody's talking about, the benchmarks that actually matter, and the one test where the worse model absolutely destroyed the better one. Plus, I've got insider information about which model the actual developers at these companies are using for their own work. And it's not what you'd expect. So let me paint you a picture. Anthropic drops. Claude Opus 4.6 at 9 a.m. Eastern. The tech world loses its mind. This is their most powerful model ever. Everyone's talking about it. Benchmarks are flying around. People are testing it live on stream. Then, 20 minutes later, OpenAI counters with GPT 5.3 Codex. But which one is actually better? That's what everyone wants to know. Now, before I show you the head-to-head comparison that everyone's been waiting for, you need to understand something crucial about how these models think. Because if you don't get this part, the benchmark numbers won't make any sense. And there's one benchmark in particular, one test, where the model that was supposed to lose actually scored a perfect 100%. Not 99, not 98, 220 out of 220 points. Perfect. Let me explain what's really going on under the hood. Okay, so here's the deal with these two models. They're solving the same problem, but they're doing it in completely different ways. Claude Opus 4.6 is like that person on your team who takes their time, reads everything twice, thinks deeply about the problem, and then gives you an incredibly thorough answer. Anthropic calls this adaptive thinking. The model literally decides how much brain power to use based on how hard the question is. Simple question, quick answer. Complex problem? It goes deep, like really deep, and thinks it through step by step. It's got this insane 1 million token context window, which in normal person terms means it can process about 750,000 words at once. That's roughly 2 entire novels, and it remembers all of it, every detail. Plus, they added this thing called agent teams, where you can have multiple AI agents working on different parts of the same project simultaneously. Now, GPT 5.3 Codex? Completely different philosophy. This thing is built for speed and autonomy. It's 25% faster than the previous version, and here's the wild part. OpenAI literally used early versions of this model to debug and improve itself. The AI was fixing its own bugs, managing its own deployment, running its own tests. It's like they created a coder that can improve its own code. That's a little bit terrifying when you think about it. And they added this feature called real-time steering, which means you can interrupt it while it's working, give it feedback, and it adjusts on the fly without losing context. All right, benchmark time. But I'm not just gonna throw numbers at you. I'm gonna tell you what they actually mean. On Terminal Bench 2.0, which tests how well these models can work in command line environments. You know, real developer stuff. GPT-5.3 Codex scored 77.3%. Claude Opus 4.6, 65.4%. That's a massive 12-point gap. OpenAI wins, right? But then you look at GDP-Val. That's a test for professional knowledge work like financial analysis, legal documents, business strategy. And Claude Opus 4.6 scores 1,606 ELO points. That's 144 points higher than GPT 5.2. In competitive ranking terms, that means Opus wins about 70% of the time in high-level professional scenarios. Here's where it gets really interesting though. A developer named Alex Carter ran his own test. He's been testing AI models for years with the same 11 coding challenges. One shot to get it right, no iterations, no do-overs. He ran Claude Opus 4.6 first. Perfect score. Then another perfect score. Then another. By the end, Opus 4.6 scored 220 out of 220. A perfect 100%. He'd never seen that before. Not from GPT-4, not from Gemini, not from any previous Claude model. He thought his testing framework was broken. Then he ran GPT-5.3 Codex on the same tests. It failed on basic file handling. It struggled with authentication. It had issues that shouldn't exist in a frontier model. There's another team that built a Counter-Strike clone using both models. Know what happened? GPT 5.3 Codex finished every single prompt in about half the time, blazing fast. But Claude Opus 4.6 won on output quality for almost every single prompt. The code was cleaner, the logic was better, the maps were more realistic. Speed versus quality. That's the trade-off. So at this point you're probably thinking, okay, but which one should I actually use? And that's the million-dollar question. Literally. Because companies are making million-dollar infrastructure decisions based on this choice right now. Anthropic has always been known for safety and reliability. Their models were careful, thoughtful, but sometimes a bit slow. OpenAI has always been known for raw power and speed. Their models were fast, aggressive, but sometimes skipped steps. But if you look at these new releases, they've literally swapped strategies. Claude Opus 4.6's announcement emphasizes that it plans more carefully, sustains agentic tasks for longer, thinks more deeply. They added agent teams for complex parallel work. The message? We're not shallow anymore. GPT 5.3 Codex's announcement leads with 25% faster, and you can steer and interact while it's working. Real-time feedback. The message? We're not slow anymore. They're converging. Both companies looked at each other's strengths and said, we need that. And you know who figured this out first? The developers at these companies themselves. At Anthropic, engineers writing Claude code with Claude found that Opus 4.6 brings more focus to challenging parts without being told to, moves quickly through straightforward parts, handles ambiguous problems with better judgment. At OpenAI, their own research team used Codex to monitor and debug the training run, track patterns throughout training, and build rich applications to understand how the model's behavior differed from prior models. So, which one should you use? Here's my honest take after testing both extensively. If you're doing deep research, complex financial analysis, legal work, or anything that requires processing massive amounts of information with extreme accuracy, Claude Opus 4.6 is your model. If you're building software, running DevOps, doing rapid prototyping, or you need something that can work autonomously for hours without supervision, GPT 5.3 Codex is your model. But here's the truth. Most professionals I've talked to are using both. They use Opus for planning and research, then Codex for execution. They're complementary tools, not competitors. The real winner here isn't OpenAI or Anthropic, it's you. Because in one day, we got two absolutely incredible AI models that can do things that were impossible just months ago. If you found this useful, smash that like button. Genuinely helps the algorithm show this to more people who need to see it. Drop a comment and let me know. Team Claude or Team GPT? Which one are you using and why? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.